tomorrow is International Day of Persons with Disabilities, a day to celebrate the contributions of people with disabilities, whether those disabilities are physical or whether they're conditions that you can't necessarily see at first glance, conditions like autism or blindness or deafness. And the day is also about raising awareness about the challenges that people with disabilities face every day. Having a disability, as you can well imagine, can impact people in a myriad different ways. How one participates in everyday activities, such as going to school or joining social activities or going to work. It can affect their ability seriously to earn an income and live independently. And that's the issue that is probably the most remarkable thing about Laura Scurr's journey. You might know Laura, you certainly might have heard of her. Laura lives in Toowoomba and she studied at university, and then, despite the fact that she has cerebral palsy, she didn't let that stop her. She started to apply for jobs but found it a lot tougher than what she had anticipated. She applied for over 150 jobs without success until finally finding success lay in creating her own work and her own businesses. Have a listen to Laura's story.
I'm 34 years old. I'm born with athetoid cerebral palsy. So
Athetoid cerebral palsy affects only about 10% of all the people in the world with CP.
Cerebral palsy, which is where you get mixed high and low tone, depending on which part of the body, or even depending on how you wake up in the morning.
So that can vary from day to day.
Yes.
There's no doubt about it that in the eyes of the rest of the world, having athetoid cerebral palsy is a fairly big setback. Laura is confined to a wheelchair. The ABC building in Toowoomba has a ramp, but it's so steep that most people avoid walking up it with a heavy work bag, so you can imagine how hard it was to get up it in a wheelchair. But Laura Scurr isn't the type to let her life be defined by her condition. She decided pretty early on that she wanted to work. After all, that's why she put herself through uni.
The job hunt, I guess I started at the end of university, but having said that, all the decisions up until that point, the fact that I went to uni to study my Bachelor of Commerce, Bachelor of Business, Accounting and Leadership Management, all of that was with the end goal in sight of getting a job. It was just always something that I knew I was going to do, was get out there and get a job.
Laura had always had a good head for numbers, but as she worked her way through school, she got the idea that whatever job she wanted to do that required study, it could only be something that she could study at TAFE.
And then one of them one day said to me, "What about uni?" And I said to him, "Am I clever enough to go to uni?" And they said, "Yeah." Oh, okay, I'll think about it. I always knew I wanted to be a business person. My parents owned a jewellery store, and I grew up, I guess, sitting on my mum's lap doing the wages. June, July holiday would be spent doing the stock take. A lot of our life revolved around
The business.
I always knew I wanted to own my own business. From the age of 8, I had a dream of owning a restaurant. I don't know why, but it was just a really tightly held belief that one day I would own my own restaurant.
Yep.
So I chose business and accounting in grade 11. When we got our midterm report card from grade 11, mine came back and it said Laura is passionate about accounting. Now, at the time, I'll admit that certain extended family members gave me a hell of a lot of stick over that.
Why?
I don't know. They just said I was a nerd.
But Laura let them laugh, because that passion for accounting got her a grade point average of 6.5 in her postgraduate studies. It's pretty impressive. So, given those good results, what was your expectation when you came out of university and hit the job market? What were you expecting out of that experience?
I guess naively in hindsight, I was expecting I would be given the same opportunity as any of my fellow UQ graduates who had similar marks to mine.
When did it become clear to you that that wasn't the case?
Probably after my first ever job interview, in which I got asked, why do I expect to get a job when other students need them?
Gosh, how did you answer that?
It was a very difficult question to answer, and I think I responded that, well, like every other student that's graduated, I need to put bread and milk on my table to eat every night. I need to pay my rent if I want to move out of home. You know, I also need a job. My needs are no different to that of the however many hundred students I've had in my accounting lectures. I mean, I'm not against employers asking questions of people with a disability as they relate to the job.
Sure.
Spoiler alert, in 2018 I was fortunate enough with my uncle to buy a restaurant which I owned and ran. And as an employer, if I had an applicant with a disability, I know that I needed to find out how they were going to do the job that they've applied for. And I think that's a fairly reasonable request by an employer, if it's worded in a polite way, shall we say.
Yeah.
But you know, I could probably go on all afternoon, David, with the number of responses that I got over the year, ranging from how necessary is your wheelchair to we decided that you can't do the job that you've applied for. Right. We're gonna offer you this other role which has nothing to do with accounting, and we'll only offer you that role if we can get a handout basically to cover your wage in full. Right. We're doing you a favour by creating this role that you haven't applied for, but we determine without having a conversation with you that you can't do the role that you applied for. I mean, admittedly, I may do it slightly differently to the next person, but the job would have got done.
When it's been up to her, Laura has always been open about her disability in her applications and her resume. She reckons it would be unethical to be anything else. And besides, it's pretty hard to hide. She's in a wheelchair. Her voice can be a little bit hard to understand sometimes, and her hand movements can be a little bit shaky. So if you meet her face to face, you'll know.
In my case, it was best to disclose up front. Then the person with whom I'm applying for the job realises they make the judgment call early. I'm not wasting my time, they're not wasting their time.
Then there was a period of time when she was with a disability employment agency, and the agency told her not to mention her disability on any job application. Just don't do it. Which never sat well with Laura, because what if it was her disability that had gifted her with things that actually made her more employable?
Okay, an employable skill is problem solving. As a person with a disability, problem solving is a skill that you develop from the second you open your eyes in the morning to the second you climb into bed at night, however you might choose to climb in. And that would often be an area where I would say, as a person with a disability, problem solving is a skill that I've learnt and developed. And give an example. And the employment agency would go, no, don't mention your disability. Is it ethical to lie by omission? I don't think so.
Of course, her instincts were right. After applying for more than 150 jobs and not getting any of them, she finally landed a job with former Toowoomba councillor and tourism figure John Osborne. John was running the short-lived but very successful Tour of Toowoomba cycling event. He needed an admin assistant, heard about Laura, realised his office could do with a natural problem solver who was also good with numbers and knew her profits from her losses, and so he hired her. I mean, after so long applying and getting knockbacks and having your abilities questioned and having to steel yourself against that, what was it like when you were finally in the workforce getting a paycheck?
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, just like everyone else, get up in the morning, go to work, come home, earn a paycheck.
Yep.
Hard days pay for a hard day's work sort of thing. It was great.
What did you spend your first paycheck on?
I think I bought tickets to the Seekers concert.
Here in Toowoomba.
I absolutely love the Seekers.
How brilliant.
So I felt really bad because they were like $150 and I was spending that on myself. And I wasn't used to doing that, you know. And to spend that much on a concert, I said to Mum, I don't know if I should really buy the tickets. I should save the money for my future, which I did. A lot of the money I earned with John, I tucked away and saved. And that enabled me to start up not only my first business, Toowoomba's Business Solution, but also later on enabled me to be a financial contributor to Cooch Catering, which was the company that my uncle and I owned when we bought Red Rock Cafe.
And that was on Coochie Mudlow.
Correct.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, she did finally get there. There is a little bit more to Laura's story, which I'll share with you a little bit later on this morning after 9 o'clock, because now she spends the time being a really powerful advocate for others with a disability trying to navigate entry into the workforce. That story later. News up next.